Welcome to the channel and the very first lesson on the channel on Excel macros, which will allow you to hopefully automate some of your routine repetitive tasks. Based on my past work experience, I can say that I have seen many instances where there's plentiful of room to automate certain tasks. Excel macros are undoubtedly a really good tool in providing a solution to that problem. Some of you who are familiar with Excel macros might be aware of the fact that there is a record macro feature on Excel which allows you to record a set of steps, and Excel will watch those steps and translate it to VBA, or in other words a script, and you can subsequently rerun it by calling that recorded macro. If the problem is more complex and if the content that you're dealing with is dynamic in nature, what is dynamic? So, dynamic meaning it might sometimes depend on user input. Let me explain that with an example. So, let's say cell A1 can take one of two values. Let's say A or B. So cell A1 can either be A or B. So if cell A1 is a value of A, then you have to do steps 1, 2, 3. Okay, and if the value is B, then you have to do steps 1, 3, and a new step 4. Okay, so these are actually steps. So say for example, step 1 might be copying something, step 2 might be pasting something. So these are small tasks that you have to do in order to get the end result that you desire, depending on the input that is given here. So how do you approach this? If you're someone who's keen on recording macros, and if you don't have any knowledge about doing your own custom macros, then what you can do is say for you set the value as A here, and then you do steps 1, 2, and 3 and record a macro for that. Then you keep that aside and you record a macro for B as well, the same way you did for A. Then you'd end up with two macros. Okay, one for A and one macro for B. Think about the user who uses this. If you're the user, then what you have to do is, since the program or the macro is unable to make a decision based on the value on what macro to choose, or it has not been programmed to do so, you will have to now decide, okay, if this value is A, I'll run macro A, or if this is B, I'll run macro B. This is very much workable. There's nothing wrong with this, but like I said, what happens if, say for example, in the same example that I explained to you, there is another cell that can either take a value of C or D, and after repeating those steps, you need to now decide what route to take based on this value. So as you can see quickly, this model gets very complicated, and it no longer becomes a workable solution. So now you have to ideally code your own macro. Writing your own Excel macros would give you great amount of flexibility, route the routines based on certain values, and also manipulate data fairly easily than you might already know. So that being said, let's dive into the lesson now. So for today's lesson, what we are going to do is we are going to set the value here as hello world. It's going to be quite a simple task, but hopefully it will be a stepping stone for you to learn Excel macros. First of all, we'll get rid of this and we'll go to the developer tab. If by any case you don't have the developer tab available to you, then what you need to do is you need to navigate to File, Options, to Options, and on Options say Customize Ribbon, and just click on the developer tab. Okay. So once you have the developer tab available to you, you can go to Visual Basic. So once inside Visual Basic, we have to now create a module. So a module is something that houses all your subroutines. You might have more than one module per program. So whatever the subroutines that are available within the module is available within the application and can be called within the application. If you don't understand what I'm saying now, don't worry too much. We'll learn it on the way. As you can see, I created a new module, and we can also rename this module if required on the module, and naming it, we can call it say core. So we have a module core, and inside the module, like I said, it's going to house different subroutines. So for example, one subroutine might be to do a specific set of steps, and then you in the same module you might have another subroutine which will execute another set of steps likewise. So our basic application that we are going to create, what we're going to do is define a subroutine. So how you do that is going to say public sub. That's it. So that's a subroutine. So let me explain this to you in detail. This is the syntax for a subroutine. The top part signifies the start of a subroutine, and the end sub statement signifies the end of a subroutine. The code will execute from the top to the bottom in order. The public statement basically gives you the access level of the routine. It can either take a value of public or private. You don't need to worry too much about this as of now. Then we have a word called hello. What does this mean? This is the name of the subroutine. You can name it anything you want. So inside the subroutine, you can write your code. Let's say so. Let me refer to range A1. Set in the value as. That's it. Simple as that. So let me save that and let's see what happens. Here, since you now have a subroutine defined, you can call that subroutine by going into macros. What you can do now is click on hello and say run, and get hello. This, even though has satisfied our requirement, might not be optimal because your user needs to basically navigate to the macro, find the macro. Suppose you have 5-6 macros here, you need to find the correct macro, select it, run it, and then finally you have the value there. Instead, what you can do is you can go to insert and say button, and when you insert the button, it's asking us to assign a macro to it. So we'll click on hello, which is the sub that we created. just a while back. So say OK, and let's also go ahead and rename this. Let's say execute. Okay, and let's get rid of this and click on the button to see what happens. Okay, so we have our hello world. The user no longer has to navigate through loads and loads of windows to get to that result, which is what Excel macros are all about. It's automating and simplifying tasks. So that's it for today's video. Let's meet next week with another lesson on Excel macros. Until then, subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up.